Hey everyone, gather round. Today, I want to share a really personal journey with you all. Something that took a lot of effort and meant a great deal to me. It's about when I was trying to learn English. And honestly, it wasn't a walk in the park. My hope in telling you this is that it shows you that picking up a new language, even when it feels like climbing a mountain at first, is totally achievable. So, let me introduce myself. My name is Emily, and I grew up in a part of the country where English wasn't my first language. For me back then, English seemed like this fascinating puzzle. I'd hear people speaking it in movies or maybe on TV and I'd think, wow, that sounds so natural. But in the back of my mind, I also thought it was something I'd never be able to do myself fluently. What really got me going was this dream I had of traveling to different countries, connecting with people from all sorts of backgrounds, and maybe even pursuing my studies in a place where English was the primary language. But there was a pretty big hurdle. I didn't know even the most basic things. I couldn't introduce myself properly, and most of the words people used just went right over my head. In the beginning, everything about English felt so foreign. The way the words sounded was so different from my native tongue. For instance, when I heard words like through or thought, they just sounded like a jumble of sounds. And let's not even get started on the grammar. Concepts like phrasal verbs or irregular past tense just made my brain feel like it was doing acrobatics. One of the toughest parts for me was actually speaking. I was so worried about making mistakes and having people misunderstand me. I remember this one time in elementary school when my teacher asked me a simple question in English, and I just froze. My palms got all sweaty, and I could feel my face turning bright red. After that, I tried to avoid speaking English out loud as much as possible. But deep down, I knew that learning English was really important to me. It wasn't just about seeing new places or pursuing my education. It was about connecting with a huge part of the world. English is such a widely spoken language, and I realized that knowing it would open up so many new possibilities. I wanted to be able to watch movies without relying on subtitles, have conversations with people from different cultures, and most importantly, feel confident in myself. So, that's how my journey started. It was a slow process, and there were definitely times when it felt really tough, but it taught me so much about being patient with myself and staying determined. And now, here I am, sharing my story with all of you. I really hope that something in my experience resonates with you and that you understand that it's completely okay to struggle when you're starting something new. Everyone begins somewhere, and that's perfectly fine. So let's keep moving forward, little by little, and I'll tell you more about how I faced those challenges and eventually learned English. Let's go back to the very beginning of my English adventure. After I made up my mind that I really wanted to learn this language, I felt a bit lost about where to even begin. It felt like standing at the bottom of a huge mountain, looking up and wondering if I'd ever make it to the top. But I knew I had to take that first step. So, I started with the absolute basics. I picked up a beginner's English grammar book from a local bookstore. It had lists of common words, simple sentences, and some grammar exercises. I remember flipping through the pages, trying to wrap my head around the rules. It was hard because everything felt so new. Even simple words like is, are, and the seemed tiny, but figuring out when to use them correctly felt like a big puzzle. I also tried watching English language TV shows and movies. I thought this would be a fun way to learn, but in the beginning, it was actually pretty frustrating. The actors spoke so quickly that I couldn't catch a single word. I'd have to pause every few seconds to read the subtitles, and even then, I didn't understand half of what was going on. I started with cartoons because they were a little easier to follow. Shows aimed at kids often used simpler language, and I could sometimes guess the meaning from what was happening on screen. Another thing I tried was listening to English music. I thought it might help me get a feel for the rhythm and pronunciation of the language. Sometimes I'd even try to sing along, even though I probably sounded terrible. It might have been a little embarrassing, but it also motivated me to get better. I also signed up for some basic English classes in my community. It was comforting to meet other people who were also learning English because I realized I wasn't the only one finding it challenging. However, even the classes weren't always easy for me. The teacher would ask us to form sentences, but sometimes I couldn't even remember the right words to use. There were times when I just sat quietly, hoping the teacher wouldn't call on me. One of the biggest hurdles for me was building my vocabulary. I realized that even if I understood some of the grammar rules, I couldn't really speak or write anything meaningful without knowing more words. To tackle this, I started carrying a small notebook with me everywhere I went. Whenever I came across a new English word, I would write it down and then try to use it in a sentence. For example, one day I learned the word fascinating. After that, I started using it all the time. This book is fascinating. That movie was fascinating. Learning new things is fascinating. I wanted to make sure that word stuck in my memory.